where the Rebbe takes everything and turns it around. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of being a Chabadnik. To turn everything upside down. Right? That's what you come to learn. Where do you come to learn? To turn things upside down. Make everything from bad into good, right? That's the trick. How do you do that? How do you do that? It says in the Neshama, Tzaddik's Neshama comes down to the world to take from bitter and make it sweet. That's why he comes down to the world, to take bitterness and turn it into sweet. And that's what the Rebbe came down to the world for. And he did it extremely, extremely well. And this class is called When Pain Spells Gain. So you got already to picture the class. When pain spells gain. The key to unlocking the depths of self. Now, my dear friends, to those that are in Zoom land, I hope you got this new book. Because this book is going to go with us until, for another 15 lessons. So it's going to go with us the whole book, okay? So hopefully you got this new book of Torah studies. And that is season 2, year 19, book 70. So I hope you got this book so you'll be able to go along with us in this class. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have moved from the book of Genesis to the book of Exodus. It's a major, major move in the Jewish history. From the book of the patriarchs, right? Mainly the patriarchs, to the book of Exodus, the book of the Jewish nation, as it becomes a nation in the land of Egypt. If you take the book of Exodus, I'm not going to tell you all the whole book of Exodus right now, but you take the book of Exodus, the book is called not Exodus, it's called Shemos, it's called names, because the Torah starts off with Eila Shemos. These are the names of the Jewish people. What is the first PArsha? If you're already holding Thursday, we already learned part of the portion already. The portion of Shemos is really Exodus. If you want to talk about Galus, real Exodus, real slavery, is this week's PArsha. This week's PArsha is the depths of slavery. Once this PArsha is over, we're getting out of slavery. Because the plagues start in the next week. So this week's portion is the portion of slavery. Right? Correct? And the Torah talks about the slavery of the Jewish nation and the tzaddis they had. The real tzaddis that they had. But at the end of the PArsha, as you come close to the end of the PArsha, or the end of the PArsha, Moshe Rabbeinu is asked to go down to Mitzrayim. We know that the shibud, that the galus comes to an end, the exile comes to an end, right? So there was 10 plagues, right? There were 10 plagues. Nobody knows, doesn't say in the Torah when these plagues happen, or how many months it happened. Doesn't mention it openly in the Torah, but it's mentioned in the Gemara when this all started and when it ended. We know when it ended. It ended on the 14th of Nisan, right? We all know that the Jewish people went out of Mitzrayim on the 14th of night. So now we ended in the month of Nisan. When did the plague start? The plague started in the summertime, like in Tammuz. The third plague was actually on Rosh Hashanah, the third plague. That's your text number 1. Your text number 1, the Gemara says, in the Gemara Rosh Hashanah, the bondage of our ancestors in Egypt ended on Rosh Hashanah. At the third plague. Kinim. Third plague. Fog was the second. Blood was the first. Kinim. Dam tzvadei kinim. Lice. So the third plague happened on Rosh Hashanah, and that's when Shibud Galus ended. Egypt ended. They were too busy. Right? From the third plague and on, they still held on to the first two plagues, but the third plague, they said, we give up. Yad Hashem, the hands of God. Egypt went into a chaotic situation. Every plague was 3 weeks. And ultimately, Tishrei was the third plague. Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Teves, Shvat, Adar, Nisan was the 10th plague. The 14th day of Nisan was the 10th plague, right? The death of the firstborn. But already on Rosh Hashanah of that year, slavery came to an end. Right? You with me? But nevertheless, even though slavery came to an end, the Gemara says in the third plague, nevertheless, it already stopped by the first plague. Already things started to get shaken up. Things started to transpire from the first plague. And where do we know that? So the Medrash says, in text number 2, Avin, the Levite, the son of Rebbe, said, the plague of blood brought great wealth to the Jews. From the first plague, the first plague itself made the Jewish people have extremely wealthy. How so? If the Egyptians and the Jews were in home with a barrel full of water, the water turned to blood in the ladle of the Egyptian. It remained pure in the water in the ladle of the Jew. If the Egyptian asked the Jew for some water for his ladle, the water turned to blood in the hand of the Egyptians. If the Egyptians suggested that they drink together from the same ladle, the Jew would drink water and the Egyptian would drink blood. The only way the Egyptian had to have water was to purchase from the Jews water. Thus, the Jews grew extremely wealthy. Because this plague didn't last for a day, it lasted 7 days. So already things started to change in the first plague and on. Yes? No. God plagued, the first plague was the god of Egypt, was the Nile. So he turned it into blood. The Nile, the god of Egypt, which was the Nile, turned it into blood to show worship. Yeah, non-Jews can consume blood. It's not a problem for non-Jews to consume blood. It's hard to. I'm sure they still need water. Whether they drink blood, they need water. Most people are nimus. Most people are disgusted from blood. Some people have some kind of tradition. I don't know. There's some kind of a worshiping that they drink blood, but that's it's unusual kind of situation. No. There were no blood libels in those days. That's at this present time. No, there was later the blood libel that the Jewish people drank blood. It's some kind of crazy that they nothing to do with this plague. So that happens later. That happens in the second portion, right? That's not in this week's portion. Am I right? We don't have the plagues in this week's portion. That's in this next week's portion. This week's portion is Gullus. This week's portion is exile. So it's fascinating that Rebbe says you take a portion that deals with exile, and why do we start the portion? With these are the names. We don't call the portion of exile, which really that's the portion of exile. This is the time where Jewish people were in slavery. They cried out to God. They were being murdered. They were being hard labor, etc., etc. This week's portion is called Shemos. It's called names because it starts off with the names of the Jewish people. Now the question is asked, all the people asked, all the Mepharshim asked the question, why does the Torah start off with the names of the Jewish people? Why is it important to start off with the names of the Jewish people? It says that in last week's portion. In last week, the end of the portion of Vayechi, the Torah goes through the names of the Jewish people. So why does the Torah repeat itself? Why does the Torah need to repeat itself? These are the names of the Jewish people. It's already said last week. We know the names of the Jewish people. Everybody knows the 12 tribes. In last week, actually tells you all their children. So we know exactly the names of the Jewish people. So now the Torah starts again. Why? Why does the Torah need to start off this book with the names of the Jewish people? And now we give the whole book, the book of the names. The whole book is called the book of the names. When really the portion in this week's portion talks about Exodus, not Exodus, exile, talks about slavery. Right? So in Exodus, these are the names of Jewish people. Why does the Torah start off in text number 3 with these? Why everybody's bothered by that question? Rashi answers a simple answer to the question in text number 4a. Rashi says, although God counted the 12 tribes by names when they were alive in last week's portion, he counted them again after their passing. He repeats it in this week's portion to let us know how precious we are to him. First, you see where the Rebbe is going already? You don't see it yet.
After they cast
No, how precious we are to him. We, Jews, are to him. The Torah repeats the names of the Jewish people again, even though they have passed away, to tell us how precious they are to us, how precious God is, the Jewish people are to him. That means that the Torah right away says, when it goes into the book of Shemos, which really in the first portion is the book of exile, right away God says, trust me, I love you. I love you. Even though you're going to have a rough time. Even though you're going to go into a rough situation, right? Right away after the names of the Jews, what does it continue to tell us? It tells us the slavery. It goes into the depths of the slavery. God right away wants to emphasize to each and every one of us that, trust me, I love you. That's number one. That's why Rashi says we start off with the names. That's Rashi. The Rebbe brings down a medrash. Truth is that it is even more why the Torah says, there's another reason why the Torah starts off Shemos, besides that God shows his love, is also because the Jewish people, and Rashi brings it down, the Jewish people were not in slavery until every one of the tribes passed away. Who was the oldest tribe to live? Anybody know? On Zoom? The oldest tribe. Who was one of the brothers lived the longest?
Levites?
Correct. Tribe Levi. Levi lived 137 years old. He died at 137 years old. He was the oldest brother. That means that the Jewish people didn't go into the slavery until he died. He died at 137 years old. That means that the Jews were already in Egypt for 94 years before he died. So Levi died. The Jewish people were 94 years in Egypt, and then started the slavery of Egypt. After they were there 94 years already. Now, how many years altogether were they in Egypt? 210. So take away 94. More than halfway there. 94 is 100 no, a little less than a half year.
34.
So So it was a lot, even though they were told to be in Egypt for 210 years, slavery, they were already minus 94 years. Okay, now go to the Medrash. That brings down a Medrash, 4b. The Medrash says, what is in the names of each and every the Jews? Why did the Torah, what's in their names? The Torah wants to tell us something special about these names. So these, the Medrash says, these are the names of the children of Israel. The names are enumerated here to connotate their future redemption. The name Reuven, which means to see, Ru'u, alludes to the passage, I saw the suffering of my nation. The name Shimon, which means to hear, alludes to the passage, God's heard the moans. The name Levi, which means to attach, alludes to the fact that God connects with the suffering in the burning bush. This fulfills the passage, I am with them in distress. The name Yehuda, which means to thanks, alludes to the fact that the Jew gives thanks to God when he redeems them. So you have, the Medrash says that each and every single one of these names alludes to the concept of their redemption. That means, in essence, the Medrash tells us that the reason why this Parsha is called Shemos, the reason why we start in the portion of Exodus, in the portion that talks of exile, in the portion that talks of exile, the depths of exile, we right away start off and say, no, this exile is not there for the sake of exile. There's no purpose in exile for the sake of exile. There's no purpose for the concept of pain for the sake of pain. Right? Yeah. There's no purpose. The purpose is to see. The purpose is for what? For the redemption. The purpose is for redemption. The purpose is not that God is interested in bringing Jews into exile for the sake of exile. We're going to exile people. We're going to abuse people. We're going to surely not abuse the Jewish nation. The purpose of any suffering in life is for the light at the end of the tunnel. So really, we have to understand the difference between exile and redemption. What's the difference between exile and redemption? What is galus and what is redemption? In the Gemara, you have the expressions Zman Habayis and galus, the time of the temple and the time of exile. What's the difference between these two times? Why are we Jews praying for redemption? Even in Boca. Well, what's wrong? The golf course was closed. What is exile and what is redemption? So what is the Beis HaMikdash? What is the temple? What is having the temple? What is having the temple? So we know that having the temple was aliyah l'regel. There was an obligation to Torah to come up to the temple, right? To come to the Beis HaMikdash 3 times a year. On Sukkot, on Shavuos, on Pesach, right? To come to the temple. And the expression of the Gemara is, if you look in text number 5, it's a very interesting expression. As they came to see, so did they come to be seen. What is that? If you have that expression, the Gemara expresses itself, right? Because the Torah, it says, come to see God. Come up to the temple to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does that mean? It's a nice, it's a good slogan. But the Gemara says the meaning is, as they came to see, so they came to be seen. Kederach ba lirais, kach ba lirais. That means that in the temple, there was something that was revealed that we haven't seen. There was some aspect between this concept of a Jew coming to the temple and a revelation of godliness that they both had some kind of they were seen and they see and they were seen. Are you with me, Moshe? What's the matter? So try to explain this. The Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, says in text number 5b, when the temple stood in Jerusalem, the divine presence was discernible in the world. There was some relationship. I can't explain it to you because we haven't seen godliness. So there was a divine presence that was discernible in the world. It was palpable in the temple. And from there, it spilled over into the rest of the world. By contrast, the psalmist says in the Psalms, in exile era, we have not seen our signs because divine presence is no more discernible. In the material world, there are too many concealments. That is gullus. That is exile. If you want to know the difference between exile and redemption, it might be a very small difference. It might be a thin hair because Mashiach can come in a second. But the difference is that there's some kind of disconnect right now. I can sit and talk about God. I can sit and contemplate God. But there's a disconnect between the thought, the intellect, and the reality, what I see. And that's why I pray to God every day that the reality should not be such a contrast to my intellect reality. Right? Don't give me a challenge that even though intellectually I might have a spiritual reality, but in the reality of my physical reality is too strong for me to overcome my spiritual reality. Because the physical reality of myself, my own feelings, my own desires, my own needs, my own life can be sometimes much greater than the spiritual reality. Because this physical reality I see, I feel, I have a very intimate relationship with. And the spiritual reality is something that I've learned about, I've heard about, I imagine, I can fantasize about. Look at text number 5c, a little bit more deeper. In the temple era, we had a very different relationship with God than today. At that time, we sensed God verily in our souls. Can you imagine this? Moshe, you would have no problems in life. We comprehended him thoroughly. What? What is verily? I think not verily.
Verily, V-E-R-I-L-Y. I've never seen that.
Okay. You didn't go. Anybody know what verily means? We comprehend him thoroughly, felt his presence palpably, and grasped him intuitively. Gave you a bunch of good English words. This primed us for an organic mind-heart relationship with God. And we formed a real love, closeness, and even attachment to Him. Now in exile, we can't perceive God. This is the meaning of the phrase, I am asleep in exile. Sleep is observed primarily in the eyes. The phrase, we are asleep in the exile, refers to our eyes being closed. We cannot see God. At best, we have a murky understanding of God. Thus, our relationship with God is rooted in our efforts to understand Him. We are unable to see Him.
The meaning of verily
Yes.
is in truth.
Aha.
Certainly.
Right. In truth, certainly. Correct. So we have it. We believe it. We have this belief. We're more on a belief situation. Seeing is believing. Right? I don't need belief, actually. Seeing, I don't need belief anymore because I see it. Eibishter wanted God always wanted the see. Should be able to see godliness. We understand godliness. We don't see godliness. And that is gullus. That's the sadness that we are in, but not for 1 year, for thousands of years. The real question is, the real greatness of gullus is the greatness of the Jewish people. That for thousands of years we haven't seen God, and we're still hanging in there. We're still hanging in there. We haven't budged yet. We haven't budged. That's the greatness of the situation. The mistake, so Manas Friedman gives the same famous, he brings down Manas Friedman. The Rebbe didn't say Manas Friedman in the Sikha, trust me. But he brings down, this is his famous statement he gave once, with the 3,000-year-old cold soup. That was his, so he said 3,000, text number 6A, Rabbi Manas Friedman said 3,326 years ago, God asked us if we'd marry him. He had an extraordinary wedding ceremony with great special effects, and we were wowed. And after the wedding, he said, I have a few things I'd like to take care of for me, so please, I'll be right back. And he hasn't been back since then. That's it. He took it off. For more than 3,300 years, he has sent messages, postcards, writing on the wall. But we haven't heard a word from him in all that time. Imagine, a couple gets married, and a man says to his wife, would you make me something to eat, please? I'll be right back. She begins preparing. The guy comes back 3,300 years later. Walks into the house, up to the table, straight to his favorite chair, sits down, tastes the soup that is on the table, and the soup is cold. So will he get angry? What would his reaction be? If he was a wise man, he wouldn't complain. He'd really think it's a miracle that the house is still there, the table and his favorite chair is still there. He'd be delighted to see a bowl of soup in his place. The soup is cold. Oh, yes, it's over 3,300 years. The soup is getting cold. That was his favorite line he had. The Eivishter is happy that the soup is on the table. The Jews are still there. The house is still there. The table is still there. The Jewish people are still there. The soup is cold. We're a little bit cold. We're a little bit, indifferent a little bit. We're not so hot. We're not so excited. We're not so inspired. What do you want? You haven't revealed yourself in 3,000 years. That was his line. That was his line. It was line. So why? Isn't that amazing? 3,000 years. Forget about 3,000 years from Matan Torah. 2,000 years of exile. 2,000 years of exile. And if you know your Jewish history, it was not the happiest exile that Jewish people have gone through in 2,000 years. Baruch Hashem, in the last 70 years, Baruch Hashem. But for thousands of years, Jewish people suffered extremely through this exile. But we just never gave up. We never gave up. What is it that we never gave up? We could have always said, listen, God gave up, so why don't we give up? Right? So he had another line, I'll say it. He says, I wrote this down, we can't stop being Jewish any more than we can't stop being ourselves for some reason. We can't stop being Jewish. The Jewish people just can't stop being Jewish. Because the giving up on Judaism would not be giving up on Judaism. We're giving up on ourselves, in essence. Giving up Yiddishkeit, but we're giving up ourselves. Have we failed in certain things? Have we given up? Have we got cold in certain areas? Have we got lazy? Yeah, but have we given up? The Jewish people are not giving up. This was his next famous story. He always said, Rabbi Manas Friedman, should live a long and happy life. As a Jew sitting in a synagogue on Yom Kippur, ask a Jew sitting in a synagogue on Yom Kippur, fasting, do you believe in God? You can't get a straight answer. Depends what do you mean God is. It depends on the context. That is the philosophy of Sanskrit. Otherwise, they'll say, what am I? A rabbi? I don't know. So you ask what appears to be a logical question. Then why are you here? For some reason, this average Jew who doesn't believe in God and not very religious will look at you like you're crazy and say, what do you mean? It's Yom Kippur, right? It's Yom Kippur. Where's a Jew supposed to be? So he says, this is not normal. Let's analyze this for a moment. What is this Jew actually saying? You ask him if he believes in God. He says no. Or when I was younger, I used to. Or when I'll get old, I'll start to. So you don't believe in God? No, I don't. Are you religious? Furthest thing from it. So why are you here? Because it's Yom Kippur. What he's saying is, why I'm here? Because God wants a Jew to be in a synagogue in Yom Kippur. So where else should I be? So you say, but you don't believe in God. So what? He doesn't understand your problem. He's saying today's Yom Kippur, even if I don't have a calendar, this is a synagogue. Even if I don't like it, I'm a Jew. Even if I'm not religious, and God is God is God. Even if I don't believe in him, so what's your problem? And so too happens everything. That's the beauty of That's the beauty of Yiddishkeit. That's the beauty of Jews. That's the beauty of Jews. The beauty of Jews is the beauty of Gullus. The beauty of Jews is the beauty of this exile. They brought down Manas Friedman, his quotes, to emphasize what the Rebbe really wants to emphasize, is that the Torah starts off with the death of exile, Shemos, to tell us about the names of Jews, the beauty of Jews. Then the Torah goes into the miracles of God. But first the Torah tells us about exile, about the pain and suffering, about the troubles, about true slavery. Why would the Torah want to emphasize slavery? To talk first about the beauty of Jews. In essence, the Torah God wants to emphasize the beauty of Jews before he wants to emphasize his own miraculous greatness. The Frierdiker Rebbe says in text number 7, going back to the Sikha really, it's obvious that the Jewish soul is fortified during exile to withstand the fierce opposition it encounters. This is because his instinct relationship with God is more evident today than in the times of the temple era. That's where you see the beauty of a Jew when he's in exile. Though your mind, though our mind and hearts have been reduced capacity to perceive and feel God due to our sins, our heart remains alert to God. It's easier to sense our instinct oneness with God today than it's in the time of the temple era. Today, every Jew can easily arouse their inherent love for God that transcends all logic. Because he has no logic. It doesn't make sense. Without much effort. This is so amazing that they put this class today, because that's what's happened. But that's, through the pain and suffering that we've gone through, woke it up to Jewish people. The pain, tragedy of the Jewish people brought about a true awareness. Ironically, the darkness of exile is the very reason for the emergence of our instinct lawlessness. When our intellectual relationship with God fades, it stops covering up our essence. The darkness of exile allows our inherent connection with God to emerge and to expand in the deepest chambers of our hearts. This translates into the unshakable faith in God and a commitment to avoid sin and to embrace God through his goodness. You with me? What? You complaining, Moshe? Moshe, you wouldn't be real if you were not complaining.
Me too.
So look at text number 8a. This is just an interesting page number 15 of your book. Resistance training. I never knew there was such thing as resistance training. Okay, I think I need to go to that. Is based on the principle that muscles of the body will work to overcome a resistance force when they're required to do so. When you do a resistance training repeatedly and constantly, your muscles become stronger. We all need to go on resistance training. We're going to start a class in resistance training here at Chabad. That's it. We need to bring out this concept, right? So when our souls, when we work on to resist a force that encounters us, that's when we reveal our true essence. When we give in, that's when we fall into slavery. We have to resist. We got to learn to resist those temptations. We got to learn to resist. And we find a very interesting expression. God, in the book of Devarim, text number 8b, it's a beautiful pasuk. It says, when a person is far away from God, when a person is in tzaros, he's in pain, the verse says in Deuteronomy, "Ubivkashtem misham," when you seek God, your God, from there, you will find him. Interesting expression, misham. Why does it say from there? It should say you search God, you'll find him. Why does the verse say misham, from there? That means when you're there, and it's the there that brought you the resistance. When it was there that brought you to search God, then you'll find God. Most will say, when I'll be someplace else, I'll serve. Right now I'm in pain. Right now I'm here. Right now I'm in tzaros. When I get out of tzaros, give me a call. No, bikashtem misham. That's what the Gemara says. When somebody's sick, God forbid, nobody should be sick. If somebody's sick, he should be the one, even though everybody else should pray for him, he should be the one to pray the first. Was it this verse? Vikashta misham. Because you have to take the place that you're in, the pain and suffering you're in, and say, this is going to create the bakasha. This is going to create the prayer. And when that creates the prayer, it's a resisting prayer. It's a much more powerful prayer. It goes much further. So therefore, because you seek him with all your heart and your soul, that's why. Because the second a person takes the negative and he has this negative, he realizes that there's a resistance. Then he creates within him a power, which creates within him a unbelievable strength. You with me?
Yes.
So, as we come to the end of the class, let's come back to Golus, to this Parsha. The same thing the Torah wants to tell us in this week's Parsha. Torah talks about Golus Mitzrayim. The portion that deals with this week's portion that deals really with the exile, real exile. The Torah, that's real resistance. This was not a joke to the Jewish nation. This was a serious time, right? You read right in the beginning of the portion, all firstborns will be killed, and later on in the portion, he bathed himself in the blood of Jewish children. This was a terrible time for the Jewish nation. Holocaust. Real pain and suffering that the entire Jewish nation cried out in pain. But right away, the portion starts off with the beginning, Eila Shemos. Right away, the portion starts off to realize that it's there that the Jewish people should realize that Chas Shalom, that this pain and suffering is not a disconnection. This pain and suffering is not a disconnection. This pain and suffering is actually to reveal a greater inner connection. This pain and suffering will bring out their greatness. It's not going to bring out God's greatness that he can redeem them. He could have redeemed them before. It'll bring out their greatness that they won't give up. Even though they might have the right to give up, they might have all the reasons to give up. They might say, as Moshe Rabbeinu says, they're going to ask God, where are you? What's your name? All the things that Jewish people could ask and do ask. But the Eibusha says, this is going to bring out the greatness of Jews. That's why I love them. That's why I love them. Why? Because they love me. They have an unconditional love to me. They don't have a rational love. They have an unrational love to me. And that's why the whole book is called Shemos, my friends. So the whole book is called about the names of the Jewish people. It's called about Jewish people's names. Each one and every one of us, our names. Because every one of us are the names of the Jewish people. Hopefully, each one of us has a Jewish name. And as I'm going to end off this class, as I always say, the importance of having a Jewish name and the importance of using your Jewish name, even though you might have an English name. But the importance of using your Jewish name. Because the Gemara says, the reason the Jewish people were redeemed with the exile because they never changed their name. And it's interesting, the Gemara picks out this concept. They didn't change the name. Because as the Rebbe is going to end off, because the name is who you are. Even though there might be hundreds of Moshes in this world, and hundreds of Zalmans in this world. What does Moshe mean? Right. That one means to the time. Shnei two lights that came to time. That was the Alter Rebbe's name. So there are hundreds of thousands of Shnei Zalmans in the world. But when you call me by my name, then I know you're talking to me. Every time I turn to you, I say, Moshe, you know I'm talking to you. Your name, when a person faints, you call his name. So that's why you end off in Deuteronomy. God brought us out of the iron curtain, Egypt, to be a people of his possession as of this day. Why? Because when he brings the nation out of Egypt, you will worship God, and God knows, even before going out of Mitzrayim, God knows that the reason why he's taking the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim is because their relationship with him, because they want to serve the Eibishter. They love God. Even as they're in Egypt, even as they're in suffering and in pain, and they're going through tzaddis, nevertheless, a Jew, the greatness of a Jew never gives up on HaKadosh Baruch. Therefore, the Rebbe ends this class on text number 10. Our names are linked to our essence. They transcend all our surface dimensions. The proof is, when we summon someone by his name, they turn to us in their entirety. Moreover, when someone faints, God forbid, their life force is in a state of concealment and suspension from their body. Yet one way to revive them is by calling their name. This demonstrates that the name touches its bond and our deepest source of our life. This is why it can summon our life force back into our bodies. This demonstrates that our essence emerges in our own name, for which it appears to be absent. This is like an early discussion about our relationship with God during exile. Our instant connection with God emerges in exile when God is hidden and concealed. And that's why the Rebbe says, ultimately, the PArsha, this whole exile, starts off in this week's portion. It's called Names. This week's portion is called Names. The whole book is called Names. Even though it starts off with exile, this week's portion, because the essence of the Jew brought out this PArsha brought out the essence of the Jew, that the Jew can go through hell and more than that, but he never gives up his essence. Doesn't give up who he is. Why? It's above understanding. The above comprehension that Jews have been for over 2,000 years in exile, and we're still calling ourselves Jews, and proud Jews, and happy Jews, and Jews that are learning Torah, and Jews that are doing mitzvahs, and connecting to Yiddishkeit. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's above comprehension. Doesn't make statistically sense. Doesn't make any logical sense. It has to do with our Jewish name. It has to do with our Jewish essence. We cannot give up on God like we cannot give up on ourselves. Because it's one. They are one in itself. And that's why when even Mashiach comes and there's going to be a revelation of God in the world, we're going to say, we'll realize the greatness of exile. We'll realize what beauty the Jewish people revealed in the time of exile. And I believe that this sikha that Rebbe said many, many years ago is most evident today as we go, as Jewish nation, go through tzaddis, pain and suffering, especially Jews in Israel and Jews throughout the world. But we continue to shine. We continue to shine as Jews, as people that are connected to God. We continue to shine, show the greatness of the Jewish nation. May we continue to shine as a Jewish nation. May we show the Eibishter that we will not give up. We will not give in. We will stay connected to him.
Amen.
God bless you all. Have a
Rabbi, can
wonderful
I add
day.
something?
Yes, sure. Let me just get off of Facebook, and then you can ask me all your questions.
It's a statement.